Hey everybody, this is Dustin with www.gamblingonfreedom.com. I am a certified hypnotherapist who specializes in problem gambling, compulsive gambling, gambling addiction. And in today's video, I want to talk to you a little bit about how you're not just quitting gambling, you're rebuilding your life. You're not just quitting gambling, you are rebuilding your life. Now, in the last video I made, I talked a little bit about this in terms of why that is. And today I want to kind of elaborate a little bit more, maybe go a little bit deeper. So, we have discussed in my previous videos pain versus pleasure and kind of how the addiction starts and how it kind of starts with pain, honestly. It doesn't start with chasing money, it doesn't start with uh, really relief either, which is what most people think it is. It actually starts with pain. It starts with you having your everyday life experience and not realizing over the years how, even though it's everyday life experience and you've normalized it for yourself, that it's painful in some way. And so what happens is at some point, whether it's on your phone through a betting app or in person at a casino, bachelor party, something like that, you go and you relieve the pain, right? Because you're having fun and you're excited and you're in a good environment and people are having fun and people are smiling and there's drinks. And so all this stuff becomes really, really fun. And your normal everyday life experience is kind of mundane. It's like going through the motions, it's all routine and it's fine, but it's not this. This is your dopamine levels when you gamble are here and your life uh, dopamine baseline is here, right? So every weekend you jump up here, and over time, this is all you want. You don't want this anymore. So life becomes mundane and boring and not exciting, less fulfilling. And so you're not just quitting gambling. You're not just quitting gambling because you have to rebuild your life. The stuff that you're running away from or not wanting to experience anymore has to sort of improve so that you'd want to do that, right? This stuff has to feel better again. That's going to help with this because if this and this feels the same, then when you stop gambling and life feels great, then you don't need to come back to gambling, right? There's no relapse that happens. So what happens is people quit and they use a very, very specific process of quitting. Generally, what they do is they use discipline and they use willpower and they quit and they force themselves to quit because they know they need to, right? Well, what happens is, your dopamine levels are really high up here when you're gambling. You're having all this fun, all this reward, all this positivity. Come down here, to your everyday life experience. It's mundane. So, of course, you're going to relieve that at some point to come back here. But then you start losing and you lose your paycheck and you spend your whole paycheck on the gambling and now you have no money for groceries or for bills. Now you're struggling to keep promises to people. You're struggling to keep the lights on. You're struggling to, feed your kids properly. You're struggling to live your life, right? And then to relieve all that pain of life mixed in with the mundane feelings now because there's not as much dopamine about life, they go back. That's the relapse because eventually your life is going to feel too painful, right? It's too painful. This is forever. This is until you die. Your life is until you die. Gambling is only that night, right? Until you go back. And so, yes, this causes pain because you're getting, debt and all these other things that it could cause pain for. But this is you living like this forever. So if you use your willpower and discipline to stop and quit gambling, and then you go into life and you stay at this really low dopamine levels and nothing in your life feels good and you're just grinding through it. Eventually this is going to be far more painful and you're going to move away from it and go back towards pleasure, which is gambling, right? So it's not about just quitting, it's about rebuilding your life, and it's not about willpower or discipline either. It's more about identity and belief and habit and emotion. Okay. So, and this is something I want to bring up right now, actually. I know in the previous video, towards the end, there was a concept about willpower and discipline I wanted to flesh out and provide for whoever's listening. And I want to thank you for listening, by the way. I know I'm just kind of off the cuff in these videos, so hopefully it all is coherent and makes sense. But I want to thank my subscribers. I think that's awesome. I appreciate you guys. So anyway, willpower and discipline, there was something I was talking in the last video about, and I remember what that is. So I want to kind of reiterate it here. It's a very important thing to understand about discipline and willpower, aside from it just being a finite resource, conscious resource. Um, Here's the thing. There's a lot of fitness gurus, a lot of health gurus out there who will tell you just be disciplined. You need to increase your discipline and your willpower, and you need to forget how you feel. Regardless of how you feel, you need to do the thing. You need to do the thing because you're disciplined and you have willpower. Okay. And yes, you need discipline and you need willpower, and you need to want to be disciplined and have willpower towards something. But here's the thing, everything at the subconscious level is motivation. Everything is pain versus pleasure. Okay, so it's a very big principle. It's not the only principle. It is a major principle, but it's not the only principle. In fact, it's not even the strongest or most important principle. It is just a principle of the subconscious mind. Pain versus pleasure. You move away from pain towards pleasure. It's not always as easy as it sounds. But what you'll hear from other fitness gurus who don't actually understand how the mind really works is they'll say, just use discipline and just use willpower. Well, if you've talked to any addict for any addiction in any reason, way whatsoever, whether they're addicted to sugar, they're addicted to video games, they're addicted to gambling, they're addicted to drinking, they're addicted to weed, cigarettes, other substances, it makes no difference. Whatever the addiction is, any addict that you've ever talked to, I guarantee you have tried to use willpower and discipline to quit forever. But they don't and they can't because that's not how it works. All right. Here's the thing about discipline and willpower, you want to be disciplined and have willpower. It's still motivation. The only reason a person is disciplined on anything is because they enjoy what disciplined feels like. They like being disciplined. That is the motivation. You're still being motivated to be disciplined, even though you're using discipline to achieve your goal. If you didn't want to be motivated, if you didn't want to be disciplined, if you didn't like what discipline does for you, if you don't feel like discipline is helping you in any way, or if it's too much effort or whatever, and it feels horrible to be disciplined, you're not going to be disciplined. But if you have the mindset of discipline is great, it helps you build your business, it helps you, get the girls, it helps you, get your muscles, it helps you in XYZ reasons. That is the motivation for being disciplined. So all these people who say they're just disciplined, they have no motivation, they do whatever they do regardless of how they feel. No, you don't. No, you don't. I don't care who you are. No, you don't. Because you still want to be disciplined. You still have the motivation to be disciplined. You still feel like discipline is the right answer. You still believe that discipline is the right answer. You still identify as a person who is disciplined. That is motivation. Okay, motivation for one isn't just a feeling, it's emotion, yeah, but it's also belief, identity, habit. Okay, motivation is different components. It's not just how you feel. And again, the very fact that you even feel like you like to be disciplined is motivation for being disciplined. I hope that makes sense. It's not all about willpower or discipline. It's a very conscious thing. It's here. This is your prefrontal cortex, your frontal lobes. This is where logic and reasoning and discipline and willpower and analyzation comes from. And it is very important. And it's actually a very huge component to the whole thing working properly. You need to have it But as I explained in the last video, you don't want to rely on it, right? If you're relying on it, what happens is this. Think of this as a race. This is the finish line, this is the starting line, and a person has just discipline and willpower, and they're right before the finish line every time, right? But when you use belief and identity and emotion and habit as the fuel, as the motivation, and you use that first, and you get to the very end, and maybe you have a hurdle that you have to get over. Now you use discipline and willpower and you break through that hurdle. That's how discipline and willpower actually help you. If you just use it at the start of the race, you will flop at some point because it's a finite resource. It's a finite resource. We have more discipline and willpower at the beginning of the day. This is why towards the end of the night, if you wake up at 6 in the morning, probably by 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, that discipline and that willpower has been depleted. Right? It's been depleted. And so now it's harder to stop yourself from gambling because you've been thinking about it all day. You've been desiring it all day. You've been craving it all day. You've been, holding yourself back for the whole week, right? And so you've been using your discipline and willpower to keep it at bay. But now, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, when it's actually fun to go gamble, that's when that just bloop, just falls away because it runs out, it burns out. The fuel leaves faster. People think that, oh, the emotion will leave faster, the motivation will leave faster, and so you don't need to rely on that. No, it actually doesn't. Your values, the values of you, your core values of who you are, those are character traits. Those will stay with you for the rest of your life, 365 days a year, all through your entire life. Every year, your values will remain the same, right? Your identity is strong. Okay, if you have an identity as a gambling addict, that identity has to shift, right? It's just like when we work with smokers. They have a smoker's identity. We need to help them become non-smokers because as long as they believe and identify as a smoker, they're going to be one. It's the same thing with problem gambling or gambling addict. Those are identities, right? And that is part of the motivation. If this is just who I am, of course I'm going to do it, right? So yes, it's not about discipline and willpower. We do need it, but it's finite resources and it's only 1/10 of the equation. Everything else is below conscious awareness, subconscious. It is identity, it is belief, it is emotion, it is habit. Right? So hopefully that helps. This was just a video kind of touching on the last video, maybe bring in a little bit more information so you guys can understand gambling addiction a little bit differently, a little bit deeper than what maybe some people talk about it as. A lot of people talk about it from a conscious point of view. They use things like journaling and cognitive behavioral therapy and certain things like that that really are just conscious ways of dealing with the addiction. But that's why most programs and most ways to deal with gambling addiction take so long. That's why it takes 6 months to a year or longer. And that's maybe if they can even help the person after however long they do it with these conscious methods. I propose let's do it subconsciously. Let's help you rebuild your life, not just quit gambling. Let's help you identify and believe and feel and have a different habit going towards different things. That's how we change it. So if this video was helpful, please follow, please subscribe. I want to thank my subscribers, by the way. It's pretty awesome. This is new to me. I'm not really good at making videos yet. So, I want to thank you for subscribers. I know my videos are kind of off the cuff and raw, and I don't use scripts or anything. So it's just kind of stuff off the top of my head, things I want to talk about, and questions I'm answering, things that I hear. So if you guys like this content, follow for more, subscribe. If you are a problem gambler, if you know problem gambler who really does want to quit gambling and and they've tried different things, they've tried different methods, feel free to book a free consultation. www.gamblingonfreedom.com. Let's talk. Let's just hash it out and see if we can do anything, right? See if we can actually come to an agreement of helping you and get you out of that gambling addiction back into your life, rebuild your life back into a very healthy way. And because we're doing it at the subconscious level, it's not going to take 6 months. It's not going to take a year. It's going to be a lot faster than that. I can't guarantee the speed, but I guarantee you it'll be much faster than traditional methods. So if that sounds good, book a free consultation, subscribe, follow, and that's all I got. Take care for now, everybody.